Hello all, how are you? So in our previous video, I have shared my experience with Deloitte. So 2 rounds in Deloitte I have completed, and I also shared like a very detailed video for that. Before that, I shared my experience with Capgemini, also with Cognizant. So if you haven't seen those videos, please take a look. It will be useful for you. So now we are going to see the next company interview which I attended, which is Ian. So Ernest and Young. Ernst and Young, so also known as EY. This is also one of the big four. As I mentioned, when it comes to big four, Deloitte and EY are one among them. So this is for the first round of my Scrum Master interview. I'm going to share. Before we get started, I would like to share a few points. So this interview question and answer discussion is purely based on my own experience. And a disclaimer is, even though if in future, if you're planning to attend like any interviews in other, for example, EY, if you're discussing, as per our discussion also, I would say for the same company, different projects, the client expectation or the interviewer expectation will be varying. So please make use of this video in the correct way. Don't go with misconception. Okay. And then few answers, whichever I have discussed here in this video is based upon my perspective. And also the expectation differs from interviewer. But don't worry, we will be also discussing on the appropriate way to answer each question. And I'll be adding like here and there few extra bonus tips for each question. Please do watch this video from start to end and provide support for my channel. That can encourage me to share more of my experience. So Ernst and Young, Scrum Master interview round 1 happened for 45 minutes for me. Okay. So 45 minutes. Actually, I was pretty confident about the interview because before that I was attending Deloitte. So I was feeling like confident enough to attend this particular interview. As usual, started with self-intro and then how many years of experience I specifically have in SAFe. For that, you need to answer, if you're having experience in SAFe, you need to exactly mention like how many years you have worked with SAFe. So it's a personal experience answer you should be giving. And I have completed one of SAFe certification. So they asked about that certification to me. That was from resume. And then since I have SAFe experience, they asked about PA planning in SAFe. So this is a SAFe question, and if you don't have SAFe experience, this may not be useful for you. But people who have SAFe experience, you should be explaining, starting with the purpose, why we are going with PA planning meeting, who are the participant, what is the total duration. For example, in my project, it will happen for 2 days completely. And then what is the cadence? For example, like what is the cadence of your PA planning meeting, whether it will happen 2 months once or 3 months once, whatever. You need to mention the correct cadence. Followed by that, you need to go with the agenda for PA planning. So how it will happen in your project. So day-wise agenda, as I mentioned, 2 days agenda. So you need to mention on a high level. At last, you should tell what is the output of PA planning. That means mainly the PA roadmap is the output. And also the dependencies commitment will be getting. So for each and every, if you're explaining any meeting, it's not only about SAFe. Even though if you're explaining any meeting in Scrum, also you need to always tell the output of the meeting, because output of a meeting is very important. So I answered in the same sequence, and I explained like even more in depth about the David's agenda. Going to the next. So next question was, quote some risks you managed, because I explained about discussion about the risk in PA planning. So that's why this question was asked to me as a follow-up question. So project specific risk. You take two risks and clearly explain how you resolve that. So some people will just tell the risk alone, but they will not tell like how you resolve. But the question is how you manage the risk. So it should be very clear. And then mention the approach. I follow Rome approach. Okay. And then we used to share the after the risk has been identified, we used to share that to the stakeholders on the impact and like how we are going to handle that risk, everything. We will be like creating that transparency. So overall, the aim should be how you mitigate it and how you resolve the risk. You should be very transparent and you should be explaining it clear to the interviewer. And just remember, this is one of the frequently asked question. Even in my Capgemini, I think the same question was asked to me in a different way. So even though as a Scrum Master, you will not directly manage risk, but always it is advised to have an understanding on what is the risk and how what are the risks like it may crop in your future project. Next question. If your product owner is bringing new features which are unplanned in the middle of the sprint, frequently, okay, this is a very important word, frequently, how will you handle the situation as Scrum Master? Because the answer differs if they are mentioning frequently, the answer differs little bit. Okay, so I want to be, you should be very clearly observing what is the question, first understand the question here. So, see, if I am a Scrum Master, I will analyze the reason for doing so. Then I will understand the business justification. That may be like a business justification also. So those things I will do an analysis, checking with the product owner directly. And then I will coach the product owner. If this is going to happen frequently, there will be like scope creep and there will be a deviation from the progress towards the sprint goal. That means the direction in which the team is progressing may get deviated. So I will make sure I'm coaching the product owner on both sides. And in accepting or rejecting the new feature, I will do a trade-off with the team and make sure the team is giving the commitment to complete that and deprioritize few of the existing stories and then have this story as a high priority. So this is how I will be handling the situation. Because if you are going to bring unplanned work in the middle of the sprint, the planned work may get impacted. So to avoid this, you need to do this. Next question. What estimation technique you use in your project? See, this is also one of the frequently asked questions. As well. Planning poker for stories and t-shirt sizing for epics. And one more point to add, if you want to go through like scope creep and these things, like I have posted a separate video and I will also add that video link in the comment section. You can even check that. Okay, coming to the estimation technique, this is for stories we use planning poker and for t-shirt sizing for epics. So be transparent on what technique you use in your project and that clearly explain that. And regarding the planning poker technique and estimation, also I have posted a separate video. I will add it in comment. Okay, so please check that if you want more information. So explain estimation of stories. So this is a follow-up question. It's an expected question. So how will you estimate stories or epics people used to ask? So estimation, normally we used to do in product backlog refinement, right? So explain your team's way of estimating story. For example, in PBR, what are the activities we will be doing? So we, in my project, they use an planning poker tool, that means online estimation tool, where we will be having an option. That means that Scrum Master, I will create a session and then I will share to the team. So each story, after the team is clear, we will go ahead with estimation. And then based upon the majority and the team's agreement, we will go ahead with the final estimate for each story. We will also ensure that it is satisfying the definition of ready. So definition of ready also, if you are not very clear or if you're not using in a project, I recommend you to go through my video, which I will have it in my comment section. In this video comment section, I will add those links. Next. one question on my just team structure and reporting hierarchy. Okay, this is like personal experience based question. So what is the team structure you have? That means how many developer, how many testers, and like what is the reporting hierarchy? So whether you will be reporting to a project manager or how that hierarchy you can explain based on your experience. Next question: what are the Scrum ceremonies you conduct? See, we have standard Scrum ceremonies as 5 as per the Scrum guide, including Scrum, sprint planning, daily Scrum call, sprint review, retrospective. Okay, so sprint is a container within which all other events will be happening. Okay, so it's like a heartbeat for the Scrum. When it comes to, you should also include PBR, because product backlog refinement meeting also we used to have, right? That also please have it as an ceremony added, and then clearly tell the Scrum calendar. That means when you're having product backlog refinement, when you're having daily stand-up, when sprint planning. So each and every event, just a sprint calendar. Start with the sprint cadence. We follow a 2-week sprint or 3-week sprint. So day one, we used to have this. And in, for example, like Wednesdays, we used to have like a refinement or whatever. You should be very clear. Because here, some people may miss sprint is also Scrum event. Okay, so that also you need to tell very clear. Next question is, what is the sprint planning ideal duration? And what is the duration of planning in your team? So, see here, what the interviewer is expecting is as per the Scrum guide for each and every event, there is a proper duration mentioned. Okay, so if you are referring to this Scrum guide, then you should be very clear that 2 hours per week sprint. That means if you are following a 1-week sprint, you should do planning for 2 hours. So if you are following 2-week sprint, in my case, we are following 2-week sprint. So first I told the ideal duration. And then I told for my team, we follow 2-week sprint. So we have 4 hours of planning, but not 4 hours we will be spending. We used to split that like 2 hours of sprint planning plus 1 hour for product backlog refinement number 1 and 1 hour for product backlog refinement number 2. So on the whole, 4 hours. This was not a standard way anywhere mentioned, but just based upon my personal experience, I have shared this and my way of working. I have shared this particular 2 plus 1 plus 1. But ideally speaking, you should be aware that 2 hours per week sprint is required. Planning is required. Okay. Moving to the next. Explain sprint planning step by step. See, all the Scrum ceremonies, please be very clear. And here I answer starting with the capacity plan. So before I come to the capacity planning, as a Scrum Master, I used to enter this planned leaves and planned trainings. All the details will be there in the capacity planning template sheet. And then there are 2 parts of sprint planning. One thing is, first, product owner will be letting the team know what we are going to deliver. What is the sprint focus? And next, how we will deliver will be decided with the team. That means assignment of stories, who is going to work on this story, and the task breakout. So these type of activities the team will be doing on their own in the sprint planning itself. So that you should be clearly telling like 1 by 1. And then you should mention the duration. This is the duration my sprint planning will happen. And for example, in day 1, it will happen in one team. And then at the end of the sprint planning, we are getting a commitment from the team to set the sprint goal. So this is one practice which many teams will not follow, but you should be having a sprint goal which will clearly tell what is the focus area for the current upcoming sprint. Okay. So sprint goal should be written in a single line very clearly to tell the business value you're going to deliver in one sprint. And then as a Scrum Master, I used to check with the team for commitment, and then I will be starting the sprint in Jira. So this is a step by step. So you should be very clear, and you should tell step by step based on your project how you are doing. Next, how many time you have grooming session per sprint? Yes. See, first of all, what Scrum Guide prescribes is we can have backlog refinement or backlog grooming session as needed. Okay. If the team feels we need more backlog refinement, we can have it. There's no particular cadence mentioned in the Scrum Guide. And in my team, I used to have like 2 hours of backlog grooming session. So you should be explaining with your team cadence, whatever you are following. Next, how many stories you will keep ready in backlog? See, this backlog means the product backlog. Okay, so always remember 2 sprints worth. It's always good to have 2 sprints worth stories ready in backlog. That means satisfying the DOR checklist. But at least 1 sprint worth stories should be available in backlog. Should be very clear and explain with your project perspective. Next, which is the most important event? That means the Scrum event according to you. See, all events are important in Scrum. Okay. But since it is mentioned as according to you, you can tell your own opinion. Okay. I mentioned retrospective. So why also you should mention along? If you're not mentioning like why retrospective is your favorite event, that can have a follow-up question. So explain why you like retrospective or whatever you, and what way you think it's more important. Okay, so retrospective normally I mention in a way like we are enabling continuous improvement here, right? So we are becoming effective day by day. That's what I mentioned very clearly. So how is retro conducted? Who wants the retro facilitation? Facilitation. See, 2 questions. Who wants this? Scrum Master is the one who will be facilitating the retrospective meeting. How is retro conducted? Same way as I mentioned, for sprint planning, you should be telling the format of retro. That means what you'll be doing first. First, in retro, I will be checking on the previous retro items, the progress. And then like how is there an icebreaker session you're planning, and like what is the format, how you will follow, and the different templates you'll be using. So these things you need to explain step by step. So have like 1 or 2 templates in mind so that you can explain with the template. Next, follow-up question the same. Explain any one retro improvement you have made. See, if you're clearly observing from which is the most important event according to you, these 2 questions. So you should be very careful in answering this particular question. Explain any one retro improvement. So this is a project specific question, and you explain very clearly on one retro improvement which you have brought in your team, and explain your role clearly in that improvement. Next, what are the templates you have used in retro? Yes, always have 3 to 4 template names ready. For example, I used to have like sailboat, cricket, start, stop, continue, jungle, many more. So all the templates name, have it ready. Just have it at least know. Just have it in mind. These are the templates we have used. Next, is retro needed for all sprint? What happens if we don't have retro? See, that's the 5th question from the retrospective. Okay. First, 2 parts. Is retro needed for all sprint? Yes. All the Scrum events are non-negotiable events, and we cannot skip. What happens if we don't have a retro? See, what does an agile tells is responding to change over following a plan. Okay. So that is, you should mention the importance of retro. Here we are, instead of following a plan, we are like responding to a change. For example, some change like which you wanted to follow. So, and then the most important value which relates with the retro is individuals and interaction over process and tools. So individuals and interaction, retrospective is the right place to do that. Here people will open up their thoughts and share their ideas, where you can bring new changes. So this is the importance of retrospective. If we don't do a retro, then we will lose the chance of doing these things. That means like these things will not be happening, and continuous improvement will become a difficult task. Okay, I think we are almost at the end. So at the end, the general questions related to my job change reason, then relevant experience, that means like how many years I have as a Scrum Master, then CTC details, which they are not supposed to ask normally. on HR is supposed to ask, but since the interviewer asked, I was also sharing the same. So on the whole, if you're seeing, interviewer expectation was most questions from the Scrum events and particularly from retrospective. So intention was to check my relevant experience and project specific real answers the interviewer was expecting. So I believe this video is useful for your preparation. So all the very best, folks. See you in next video. Thank you. Do check the comments for the different topics, whatever I discussed in this video. Thank you.